I'm going to talk about on the foundation project, but this is just a quick overview of showing you what's the foundation project sit within the program 3. So the key part, one of the key part is on looking at food for health using the different analytic solution, which I will give you a presentation on that. And the second arm is looking at the food technology precinct, which is the WOFIT, more looking on the manufacturing aspect of that. And I believe we have another presentation later on to specifically talk about one of the projects in that particular pipeline. And the third program is looking at the consumer preference and some of the sensory evaluation, and as well as capacity building. But what I'll do now is I will quickly move on to talk about the foundation project. And overall, the foundation project is to try to use to develop the various different analytical capability within the Australian National Phenome Centre, which is a research institute within the Murdoch University. And during my presentation, I'll show you a few examples how we can utilize some of those analytical solutions for analyzing different types of food products. So the foundation project was launched in October, which is just about 2 months ago. And this is a project in collaborations between Murdoch University, brough, which is an analytical instrument manufacturer, as well as DPERT, which is, well, I think everybody knows what DPERT is. And the overall aims of the foundation project is to establish analytical capability for food chemistry and molecular nutritional analysis. And ultimately, what we want to achieve is to develop a pipeline of analytical methods ready to be used by other food industry. So we have some projects already set up within the foundation project, and we also have other projects that are currently in discussion. So an example of a project that's led by an SME, that will be Mount Lindsay, and they want to look at the bioactive component of globe artichoke for linking it with human health, as well as to look at the sensory evaluations of globe artichoke. We also have projects that lead by DPERT, looking at the different type of production system of eggs, as well as a couple of other projects that we're currently in discussion. For example, to looking at the provenance of wine, as well as the sensory evaluations of different WA wine. In addition to that, looking at things like processing or transformations options to optimize profitability, as well as reduce food wastage. So there's quite a broad range of different projects that could potentially sit under this foundation project. And how do we want to achieve that? And what are the type of different analytical solutions that's available to us? Well, we're very lucky to be able to utilize the different type of research facilities available within the Australian National Phenome Centre. These are the different type of high-end research instruments that we can use to analyze the food sample, and it's already available, installed in the lab. And I'm not going to go into detail in terms of what each of these instruments can do, but what I'll do later on is show you a few examples of using these type of instrument. And the overall goal of this foundation project is that we want to develop and utilize this method to analyze food sample, because currently these instruments are used to analyze various different type of biological sample. It can be urine sample, blood sample, and so on. But how can we adapt this instrument to analyze food sample? And what we want to do is using this type of high-end instrument to give us very detailed chemical informations about the food that we want to analyze, and ultimately then we want to further develop those methods using a benchtop instrument that's available also at the ANPC. And the reason why we want to then further develop the method using benchtop method is that these type of instruments are relatively low in terms of the maintenance wise, as well as is pretty much quite easy to use, and it can just push button. So we don't need to have specialists in the center. So these are the kind of the works that we want to further develop so that they can be available at the WOFIT food industry precinct, so that if the food industry want to analyze the sample, they can pretty much just put the sample, push the button, and get the result within a few minutes. So what I would do next is that I'll show you a few of the example of some of these instruments that's available and how we can apply and adapt for analyzing food sample. The first instrument that I want to show you called the Rapid Evaporative Ionization Mass Spec, or in short, we call it as RIMS. So this particular instrument was developed by Zoltan Takas in Imperial College. And what he does is that this particular knife here is what we call it as an eye knife. Is actually a surgical knife that the surgeon used. What he did was he attached this knife to a mass spectrometry so that it can detect the kind of chemical signature as the surgeons operating on the patient, so that they can use the fingerprinting information to differentiate whether the piece of tissue that the surgeon cutting is a healthy tissue or a tumorous cancer cell. So the overall aim of developing this instrument was that they want to be able to provide a real-time solutions for the surgeons, so they can make a decision whether they should continue to excise that piece of tissue, or they think that they reach the healthy tissue, therefore they don't have to continue with further cutting out the tissue sample. So what we want to do is to utilize this piece of equipment to analyze food sample. So here's an example of a video, which hopefully it works. What it does is that as you cut the piece of meat, it generates the film, and the film will give you the kind of specific phenotyping, the chemical signal. And using this chemical signal, it can tell you what type of meat is it. In this instance, that was saying is a 90% of Wagyu beef. And here another example, this fingerprint tells us that it's 97% is a horse meat. So this kind of technique, what we can use is that to then apply it for food fraud detection for provenance type of purpose. So that's one of the instruments that we can use, have been developed for analysis of human sample, but we can then use it for food sample analysis. And another example that I want to show you is using the example of an olive oil. We have a CRC PhD student, Charlotte Rowley, who's analyzing WA olive oil. The main purpose of this particular part of her project is to find out what are the different compositions of the olive oil in WA. So we utilize an instrument called nuclear magnetic resonance. This particular instrument is very good in detecting different type of chemicals in the sample. So here I'm just showing you a small snapshot of the different chemical signatures that can be detected of an olive oil sample. And this is only the early stage of her work. So far, what she found is that, for example, using this particular pig here, this indicate is a polyphenol compound called oleacantha. And this particular compound is the compound that's been linked with the anti-inflammatory properties. And this is also the compound that when you drink, if you were to drink the olive oil, you can feel the irritation or the pungent taste at the back of the throat. The higher the content of this, the more that you will actually feel this. So you can see that for a handful of the sample that she analyzed, she's already see there's a difference in terms of the amount of this particular compound. As I say, she's only just started analyzing the this particular the olive oil using this instrument. She's still yet to further analyze it to find out what are the different types of compounds is available on this in the olive oil. So this is pretty much a work in progress. And the third example that I want to show you is Deepers would like to find out the provenance of WA eggs. So in particular, they want to find out, can we tell the difference between a cage or a free range or a barn-laid eggs? So what we do then is that we have the Dr. Sung Tong Chin. He's the mass spec specialist working within the foundation project. He optimized the methods of how to extract the egg yolk, and then we put it through using an instrument called lipidizer that's available at the Australian National Phenome Centre. So what does this lipidizer does is that we use it to analyze our blood sample to look at the different type of lipid species in our sample. So initially we use this sample to see what's the cardiovascular disease risk in an individual. But what we then do is that we optimize the methods and try and analyze the egg yolks. So what we can see is that these are some of the different type of lipid species that we can detect in the egg yolks. But all in all, we were able to detect over 900 different type of lipid species just on the egg yolk itself. So because we never apply this method to analyze egg yolks, so we try to monitor to see how well our instruments perform. And this was a batch of analysis of over a week, and we have incorporated quality control sample, which is highlighted in red here on the slide. And these, we noticed that the instrument performed very good, despite it's a completely different type of biology, it's complete different type of sample matrix. So once that we're very happy with the performance of the sample, we then receive another batch of sample where we do not know the type of production system of the eggs from DPERT. So we then use the method to see, can we tell the difference between cage, barn, or free-range egg? So far, we were very good in differentiating the cage egg. We have accuracy or specificity of over 97%. And overall, from all the sample that we have received, we were able to correctly predict over 75% of the sample. And here's just a quick summary of some of the accuracy and the specificity of the 3 different type of eggs. Overall, I think some of the early results indicating that is very promising because we have over 75% of specificity. So as I said, the project is only just started about a couple of months ago. These are some of the project that's currently ongoing that we're trying to develop and adapt the kind of instruments that we have at ANPC and to use it to analyze the different type of food sample. So I've shown you an example of meat, edible oil, as well as egg yolks. So I'm very excited with this project that we just launched because we pretty much would like to work with industry partners to address some of the real issue that they have, whether if to generate the fingerprinting information so that they can use this to enhance their brand or to validate a particular health claims that related to the product. For example, using the olive oil, if we were able to demonstrate the product have a high amount of the polyphenol that have shown to have anti-inflammatory properties, then the industry partner can use those robust scientific evidence to put relevant claims for the product, or even other aspect of work such as food adulteration, food to address the issue of food fraud. So these are just some of the examples that I put it through. And if anyone wants to find out more information in terms of how you can involve in the program 3 or specific project, or how we can further utilize the instruments that's available at the ANPC, please feel free to give us a shout. And I have my contact detail here on this particular slide. So that's pretty much my presentation so far.